Okay, welcome back to Action and Inertia, a research podcast where every episode we invite our guests to share their unique and valuable perspectives on human behavior in response to change. I am your host, Kimberly Logan, and today I am so excited to have Charmel Sippio on. Yay! Welcome, Charmel. Let's begin by just having you introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are, what your passions are or is, and where your subject matter expertise lies.
Absolutely. So again, my name is Charmel Sippio. My passions currently lie in world traveling, cannabis, and in probably like innovation and entrepreneurship, how those things kind of come together. My area of expertise is kind of all over the place. And just like my brand, I am a jawn of all trades, which, by the way, my trademark comes next month. So getting that kicked off. My review is next month. I'm so excited. But yeah, I'm a jawn of all trades, and of that, like the way that I think about it is like I'm really trying to become a renaissance person. I think it's very necessary, and maybe this is just a result of the generation that I have had the fortune to be a part of, is that we always have a hustle. We have a side hustle. We have a side hustle for the side hustle, right? And in being that, oftentimes you pick up a skill here or a skill there, and that allows you to kind of be able to move in and out of different rooms. And that's essentially a thing that I have taken to heart, and essentially allows me to learn how to learn and then immediately put that learning into action. And that's really what's at the core of being a jawn of all trades, is being able to learn and then quickly being able to turn it back around and apply it.
I love that. And we will make sure that we include the information for jawn of all trades so everybody can check that out and be inspired by that as well. So each week we have two goals, or we have two goals overall that we address each week with our interviews. First is to inspire at least one person to actively lean into change. Yeah. And second is to gather information to create a database that will eventually provide information and work as a toolkit for folks who are training for change, who are having this common human experience that we all share here, which is what this community and these conversations are all about. Right? So without further ado, we will jump right into the three questions that we ask of each guest. So question number one, Charmel, is, in the face of change, right? What motivates a person to choose action and or inertia?
Yeah, I think the answer is the same for both. I think the answer is fear. Or at least it has been for me in my experiences, right? And the reason being is that fear is an incredible motivator. And I know I look like a crazy person, like smiling as I say that, but like it is an incredible motivator. And, you either have to do what it is that you need to do, or you have to move out of the way. And that really is like, I know that we talk about like fight, flight, or freeze, but there's something about using fear as a motivator that eliminates that needing to be three things, right? It's either fight or flight, or you're freezing, right? So I think that that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I think that to choose action is also to be coupled with being sick of the circumstance that you're in, or not, or truly being uncomfortable by what it is that you're encountering. Because I think that people are either sick of a thing or you are not. And so long as you will continue to endure it, or so long as you're like, for right now I can deal with it, then you may be in a space of inertia, right? Not necessarily a space that you're going to stay in, because inertia, right. Yes, if you're stopped, you're stopped, but if you're going. But I believe that there is an in-between space in between like action and inertia, where it's like contemplative. Mm-hmm. And I think that fear, like that fear motivation is like actually where that contemplation lives. And really it's about, are you at the side where I'm too scared to move? I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to keep thinking about it though, right? And I'm going to continue to keep moving through and through and through to the other side to actually get to action, right? But not necessarily there. Or you're so scared that you have no other option but to check the box. I'm out of here. Whatever happens, it can't be worse than what I'm experiencing right
Yeah.
now. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really those two options. And once you understand what your motivation behind, you know, which type of fear you're experiencing, that will dictate if you're going to stay still or if you're going to move forward. I personally, I think. And that's kind of how I've also been pushed to move. Like either I'm too afraid to actually do anything, or doesn't matter, jump out a window, we'll figure out how to fly,
Yeah.
and that's really where it is. And I think that sometimes for my therapist, in my mindset, like it is only those two fixed points of action or inertia. That in between that I'm talking about, sometimes for me doesn't exist, or it's like grayed out and like I can't, access it or something like that. And I think that in between space of getting from one side to the other is contemplation.
Yeah.
Because even if you are in inert, if you are constantly thinking about making it to the other side and wanting to make it to the other side, it is that contemplation that continues to like not allow you to all the way move backwards. And I think that that's how you kind of string those two
Right.
together.
Right. And we talk about training for change on the podcast, and just this concept around the framework of this kind of community and the idea. And as I'm listening to you, I'm reminded about that, because that kind of transient space that you're describing between the two, because I really do look at it as a spectrum, right? And it depends on each instant, like where you are, right? Like, but that contemplation that you describe, I think is so key, because even in Olympic training and any sort of training, it is the mental perspective programming adjustment that happens here that lends itself to the physical adjustment, right? Like I would engage in a debate, but I feel like that's not that arguable, right?
I mean,
I really talk about it, we could, but I do think we're creative beings. Like everything alive begins with that trigger of an idea, a thought, some way to shift, right? Like, creativity is the engine of change, right? Like,
for sure.
So it's like I love that. I love that. And that resonates with me too, because it's so important. I think even to safely approach action, to contemplate, to run it through your mind, run the drill, right? Like run the scenarios, run, you know what I mean? Like run, because that's going to help you choose a path. So
for sure.
I love that. And that resonates with me too. So
for sure. And I think that part of like what you're talking about is like, in it being a spectrum, like it very much is a spectrum. And I think that those two poles, right? Like I think that to be inert or to be in action are like actually very slim sides of that too, right? And that's the thing that we're talking about, is that to be practiced in that moving through, in that contemplation, it's also not a thing, like I hope people don't think that it is a linear movement either, right? It's more like it's if anyone has watched The Good Place, it's Jeremy Bear Me, right? Like literally how that all looks like, kind of trying to get through it. There are going to be highs, there are going to be lows, there are going to be times where you're like, maybe I should just go back, maybe I should just stop, or maybe I need to go full tilt into this. And it's really about understanding, I think, at all times what your priorities are to that will dictate to you like what is correct and what isn't, to help you kind of balance out those highs and lows and hit like some sort of medium around doing that. But it is a practice that you do have to get into around, changing your mindset, because like you said, we're creative beings. Creativity starts in like the mind's eye, right? And just like all things, if you want to control something, you control it by its head, you turn it by its head. So if your mind space is cloudy or not in the right in the right area for action, it could color what action could look like for you,
Right.
right? And that is something that I suffer with, is that if I'm in a bad mood, everything that looks like action always looks bad. It doesn't look like a good. If I'm in a good mood, then it always looks like sky's the limit.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding where your mind is and what the possibilities that your mind will unlock as far as creativity is concerned, also I think is connected to your heart too, right? How bought into that thing are you
Yeah.
to allow it to actually lead you where you want to go? How closely related are your emotions to that thing, right? Like how tied to that is, because how tied your emotions are is going to dictate how your mind interprets what it is that it's seeing, if it's a
Right.
bad thing or a good thing, because it could be neutral. But depending on how your emotions may be coloring it in, is negative now, right? Or is positive now, or wherever it is that you are. And that is something that constantly I am having to be, you know, reminded about, either by myself or just by my therapist, that this is a process, and it is a spectrum, and all things and nothing at the same time are true as you are going through this, right? And unless you say it is not anymore, then it is. And we will get and you will get to it how it is that you need to get to it. But it's contemplation in the meantime.
Yeah.
It's contemplation in the meantime, and contemplation is a small progress toward what it is that you need.
Yeah, yeah, and an important step. I think sometimes
Exactly.
we get very caught up in the masculine energy of action and just going. But I think I love that you kind of state that, because I think that's so important. So
Mhm.
this is a perfect lead into question number two. Because I think now we're kind of getting to, right, like the system of it. I love that. I'm like listening to your heart, your mind, your values, right?
Mhm.
Like this is like a whole system. So question two is, which choice, right, action or inertia, is most beneficial to holistic wellness, when you're thinking about wellness in terms of the system of your life, right? So the
Right.
whole system.
I think I'm a unique individual to ask this question to, because I feel like I have tapped out of action over the last year and a half, right? And I am now very trepidatiously trying to step back into it. So, uh 2020, December 2020, I left the United States and I moved to Barbados, and I lived there for a year and a half. And while a lot of people are like, oh, well, it must have been great. No, I moved to another country in the middle of a pandemic. I moved to a majority Black country in the middle of a pandemic. I moved to a country with a female head of state in the middle of a pandemic. So I was on lockdown for my first, I don't know, maybe 6, 8, 10 weeks, something like that. We were in lockdown. And then I had to come back for school. But at that time, they went back into lockdown because of a volcano eruption. So for me, essentially what I did was I tapped out. There was I chose inertia, but the inertia that I chose was a very specific action.
Mm,
So right, so this is the thing, like inertia can be action if you know what the point of it is, right? So for me, I knew I needed to tap out. I knew that it was the perfect time to do so, because everybody else, no one knew what was going on. No one knew where we were going to be.
yeah.
All that people knew was for sure we weren't coming back to the office. That's all I needed to hear.
Yep.
Cool. I'm out. I'm gone. So, for me, it was going somewhere and finding a place where I could take a deep breath, and not just one, that is the difference, right? Like that is the luxury that inertia, I think in this instance, provided me, right? The action of choosing inertia gave me the opportunity to take a deep breath and
Rest.
understand and rest and understand that I hated it. Right? Like like it drove me insane. I promise you for the first month that I was there, man, I called so many people being like, there's nothing to do. I can't, I have not, ah! Like I felt like I was going really like nuts. Like it felt like bees were in my head all of the time. Like the island is, Rihanna posted a couple of years ago, like there's nothing like Barbados on a Sunday. There's nothing like being in Barbados on a Sunday afternoon. She's absolutely right. The reason for that is because Barbados is a Sunday afternoon. It is slow. It is slow. Like it is, if you have ever lived in the South and have visited somewhere, like, after Sunday dinner, after church or something like that, between that twilight time of 3:30 and 6:30 p.m., when the sun is setting and everything is just very chill, and that is Barbados, but all the time. And as an American, being somewhere where things are just, everything has to be super quick, very right now, yesterday. It's just, is anything ever gonna get, it's the thing, is like, is anything ever gonna get done around here? Like, when is this? And it took until, man, it may have taken me a year to break myself out of that, right? To really just be like, it'll get done when it gets done, right? And also I think that's a function of the weather. It's always great weather. The weather is always very nice, which is why also I think when I talk to my friends out in Cali, they're like, all right. But I'm like, if you have great weather all the time, you feel that way as an East Coaster, where it's just like you have 5 minutes of nice weather and then you're going back into the tundra. It's one of those things where you're just like, yeah, things got to get done now.
Gotta get it all done now. Yeah.
That's exactly it. But really what it allowed me to do was slow down to understand like what the start of a good day would look like. What does the start of what is an ideal day for me in my life, in my body? I've never knew what that answer was. I was never able to answer that. I couldn't tell you like, what's my ideal time to wake up? What's my body's ideal time to go to bed? Right? Not like I'm forcing myself or anything like that. Just, when will I wake up naturally? When would I like to go to sleep? Because I hadn't been relaxed enough, rested enough to actually even hear my body tell me those things. Right? So before I might have waken up, if given the time 11 a.m., I wake up at 5:30 a.m. every day now. Every day. Without assistance, usually from my phone. Because that's when it's great for my body to wake up. I know that if I have to work, be to work by 9, at the time, Barbados was an hour ahead of the States, which meant I essentially would have gotten to start work an hour later than I usually would. That was the perfect time. Starting my day to do mind thinking things, of be on these calls to figure out these things. The ideal time for me to start my day is 10 a.m. to deal with other people. The ideal time for me to eat lunch is between 12:30 and 1:30. The ideal time for me to take a break from work to just, I have to walk away, is at 3:30. Right? But I didn't know any of this before.
Right.
I didn't have the space. It didn't feel like I had the space. It didn't feel like I could choose. Didn't feel like I could choose me, or to choose what I needed and also still stay competitive. But now in this instance, right, at that time, nobody could be competitive, at least not in the way that, other people, not in the way that the standard had been set. So if that's the case, what are we going to do? Right? I saw people do two things. People either chose action to say, well, then that means that this is an opportunity to just create new things or to do something completely new. Or this is a time for me to sit my Black behind down and breathe and
Yep.
take a rest.
Yep.
Right. And not to not stop though, right? Because just because I am still does not mean that I am stopped. I had in that time rewritten my pitch deck and business plan for Jawn of all trades, because my company originally started as an event company. It was a straight up event company, basically catering to Black and brown, indigenous, queer folks. Straight folks were, invited to come, but understand that you are a guest in that space. It's a space that is supposed to celebrate and uphold the joy that is generated by, Black, brown, queer folks when like we get together. It's a family that is chosen, and it is chosen because the ones that sometimes folks came from push them out. So it's like this is a place that, open arms, like, come on, let's have, like, we keep talking about this cookout, let's actually throw one. Like let's actually throw one, right? Like that's what I was looking for. I was looking for this thing that, like, I think we were all promised watching these movies with, your Sanaa Lathans and your Taye Diggs and your, like we were promised a certain type of like 30s life that was kind of interrupted, and like we weren't quite getting there. I had my first event. It was dope. It was awesome. And then 10 days later, I had my first event, February 29th, 2020.
Yeah.
And then March 11th, 2020, everything shut down. So for me, it was just like, oh crap. But then I was like, people want to go to events and smoke weed. Great. Like that's a thing. So it was the thing for me to kind of sit and say, well, is that all that you want to do? And to write from that perspective and say, this is it. And then to have, have the people that are I thank them. People who are, my mentors, to go back to say, that's not gonna cut it. That's not good enough. Like, you have to, and me being like, no, I'm tired. Like, and that's still to this day, if anyone asks me, how are you doing? I'm tired. I'm exhausted. And it is true. I am exhausted, but not from not being rested, from having to work the system again from top to bottom. And the thing that I know is that it works. It helps me to refine, to get from the idea of having a event company that on occasion you will get cannabis, to having a company that is, no, this is a membership company, no, this is how, you will get cannabis from us. And additionally, like, these are the different tiers that you can buy into. These are, like, really thinking about, like, what have people experienced over the last 2 years that that has been paradigm shifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
The company that I was creating was a company that was being created based on what I was seeing and experiencing that was already there. What I want to create and what I am working on to bring into fruition is something that is yet to be, because I understand that there has been a paradigm shift.
Right.
And an understanding, I wouldn't have observed the paradigm shift if I hadn't stopped. If I hadn't stopped and constantly, like, had to go back to something, and reintroduce myself to an idea and really get pissed off that I had to do it, right? Like, I'm a person that it's one and done. Like, I don't like the idea.
I can relate to that.
And for some people it comes off as being impatient, and I definitely will wholeheartedly admit that. Like, yep, it definitely will come off as impatience. But to me, I would like people to look at it from my perspective, right? Like, I'm a Black queer woman, which inherently, if we're talking about the stressors that are then put on someone who ascribes to all of those labels, and then whatever it is that society will then pin to those things. Moving through this world is like moving through oatmeal. So It is inherently already exhaustive. Right. And the idea that, the idea that I am wasting time, or that I could be wasting time by having to do something over and over and over again, while it is a part of learning, there is an edge to it where I'm just like, this seems wasteful. This seems like it didn't have to. I didn't have to go that far to, learn that, or I could have stopped 2 weeks ago and still managed to,
Right.
kind of get to this place. So for me, it's a thing of, sometimes it gets a little like, nihilistic as far as like the my boundary around time, and my boundary around feeling like I am either wasting my own and or someone else's time. It is a sin and highly egregious to me if I feel like someone has wasted my time. So the
Yeah.
idea for me to have to go back and do something time and again. However, what I can say is, having worked on my business plan, having worked on my business pitch, that shit is better now. I'm sorry. Can I curse? I didn't even ask you.
So it's labeled as not for kids.
Gotcha. Okay, great. I didn't even ask. But like, it's better now, like it's better now. It's so
Yeah.
much better now. Right?
Yeah.
It's so much clearer now. Like, I definitively know, and I've been a person that has come from a perspective of like, maybe slotted as negative. I can always tell you what I don't want versus what I do. However, you could still develop a picture from a negative.
Yeah. You tend to.
So you can develop a picture from a negative. So for me, like, this process that has been tedious, absolutely tedious, and like, but it has granted me the clearest vision of my organization that I have, like, ever been able to see, ever been able to touch, ever been able to kind of really think about, like, what does this mean? And all of that from paradigm shift of the last 2 years, and me having taken a moment to stop and breathe and like
Yeah.
think.
And having to,
Right.
sounds like, lean into the side of the spectrum that is more focused on inertia to achieve that holistic wellness. I love that anecdote. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us, because I think it's important to kind of like balance the ideas around this, right?
Right.
I absolutely love that. So I love when the conversation is flowing like this. So natural lead into the last question, which kind of begins to be answered in the second question. I mean,
Sure.
maybe I'm a genius. I don't know. No, but so the last question
Probably.
is probably. I actually think we all are. But what traits exist in people who consistently choose action? And I think, as I'm asking the question, I really want to wrap it into the conversation that we've had, where we're kind of highlighting how cyclical this is, especially just from this anecdote about, right, like your kind of like road to wellness through kind of this lens. And like, what are those traits that have kind of taken you through that cycle, to now where where you are admittedly at the highest peak of understanding your personal mission and your
Sure.
drive for your business and yourself.
Sure. So I mean, first and foremost, I'm definitely not at the peak of this. Like, I am on the upside of maybe a new Sisyphean sort of like undertaking, which I really do think it will be a situation like that. Like, I think it will be a thing where you feel like you've made it to the top, and nope, you've just run down the side of something else,
Yeah.
And that's really, I think the goal of, I think the trait of a person that continues to choose action, even if the action that you choose is inertia, right, is the trying,
Mm.
right? Are you a try hard? Are you a person that, like, you have to do it, right? When I was 8 years old, in a fit of rage and anger, I told my mother, I am moving out of the United States and moving to the other side of the world. Like, I'm going to school in China. I was 24 years old. I got my MBA from Temple University, And part of that program was to live in China for probably a month. We probably were there. Sure, it was only a month, but I did it. I did it. And the thing that I continue to remind myself about is that even if if you say that you're going to do a thing and the thing that you feel like you achieved was only the dotted line outline of what that thing was, you still did it. Right? Now, you do have the option to continue to go back to keep refining it, right? Keep working on it. That is that action, right?
Mhm.
Keep doing it. Go back to it again. Go back to it again. Now, if it's your passion, you inherently will not be let go. You will not be turned loose from it. You
Yeah.
won't. Like it will have its hooks in you. When you sleep, you will be thinking about it. When you are awake, you will be thinking about it. When you're showering, it will always be going in the back of your
Yeah.
mind. In the back of my mind, I am constantly thinking about how do I make this business that to this day I have not delivered a single product yet. But what is the first iteration of this business look like? What does the second iteration of this business look like? What does the third iteration of this business look like? Like that's what I'm constantly thinking about. And I think that that is what that special action is for people. It is the trait is to constantly keep doing it, even if you have been punched. If you're Rocky and it's like Rocky, you've been beat up. The thing about Rocky is there's a Rocky 2, there's a Rocky 3, right? Like it still keeps going.
Yeah.
Technically, there's Creed, right? Like it still keeps going. So if you choose to keep going, it is the understanding that you do not have to continue to go at the speed that you went before, because it's probably not beneficial for you. It's probably unhealthy. And that's a thing that I learned about myself. I was doing too much. I wanted to be everywhere. I was treating myself like a visa. I wanted to be everywhere. I wanted to be like that's where I was. Like like I was everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's wanting to be somewhere and an understanding of whether or not that's a good use of your time, right? These are all of these streams that have finally kind of come together to say, like, look, if I get up at 5:30 in the morning, if your event starts at 8, baby, listen, at 8:30, I'm winding myself down to get into the bed by 9:30, 10 p.m. at the latest.
Yeah.
So I might not be there, especially if it's during the week. Now on the weekend, I might play a little fast and loose on a Saturday, or on a Friday. But I get up at 5:30 Monday through Saturday. So the likelihood of me coming out on a Friday might not happen,
Right.
because I need to use that time to be creative for myself. I need to use that time to be, to craft my day to craft and turn my day toward all of the possibilities that are within my reach, and also at the leisure and pace that I need to get it.
Yeah. That's the time.
I'm not racing anyone anymore.
That's your time to try.
I'm not racing anyone anymore. Exactly. Leaving the States during the pandemic, and going to Barbados specifically, took away the idea of time.
Yeah.
Right? Of hearing the clock.
Also,
exactly.
I think the pandemic in general, time is not a real thing. We were in the house for 2.5 years. Time is not a real thing.
Exactly. It's not a real thing.
In Ethiopia, they're 7 years behind. Time is not a real thing.
Or they're exactly where they're supposed to be, right? Like that's why I'm always like, look, what would I do going back 7 years?
7 years back. Oh my God. Well, Charmel, this has been such a great conversation. I'm so grateful for your time and your mind and your perspective. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks again to everyone out there for being here, for hanging with us on Action and Inertia. We'll be back, every Wednesday with a new episode. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support this research, please, follow the prompts to subscribe, get your notifications for new episodes, like, share, talk about it. Have this conversation in your own friend groups and family groups and dinner tables and brunch tables. Ask yourself these 3 questions. Check us out on Instagram at Action and Inertia. We are so thrilled to continue this conversation and build this community. Charmel, thank you so much for being here. And that's it. We're signing off.
Peace out, y'all. Appreciate you.